Hello, New York Rangers fans, and welcome to the 34th Scouching Report for the 2020 NHL Draft. Today we finally reached the top-ranked prospect in this year's NHL Draft, Alexis Lafrenière of the Rimouski Océanic. Lafrenière certainly needs no introduction. He would have been a top pick if he were eligible last season, and he has been on the radar of scouts and Quebec Major Junior Hockey League fans and NHL fans alike for a multitude of years now. And the day has finally come for Alexis Lafrenière to finally meet his destiny and set off on his NHL career. Now, is Alexis Lafrenière all butterflies and rainbows like everyone seems to think? Well, I guess we can find out together. So if you've never seen a scouting report before, the way that we break down a prospect is we look at 5 separate categories: think, move, get, pass, and shoot. Within each one of these categories, we give the player a number and a letter grade, where the number indicates the overall tier of talent that I saw across 7 games I tracked, and the letter indicates the overall consistency that I saw within that tier. So to get things started, we look at the think category, and to me, Alexis Lafrenière per possession of the puck might be one of the most efficient thinkers of the game that I have ever come across. This is exhibit A of a player who has tons of flash to his game, but you don't see it often because he doesn't need to use it often. Away from the puck, he's able to bear down on opponents, and he certainly plays more physical than you might think for high-octane offensive talents. And offensively, he is just the king of those little plays that continue to push play. And as he does so, he is just a hard player to get on top of and shut down. He does an extremely good job anticipating the flow of play, getting in the way of opponents, and getting in the way of those opponents in the puck. And with the puck on his own stick, he is as deceptive as it gets and uses that deception and intelligence to just generate offensive danger constantly. However, I do question where Lafrenière's head is at some of the time. It feels kind of overwhelmingly apparent that this is a player who is so good that he's kind of outgrown junior hockey and he knows it. And it's to me gotten to the point where he forms a lot of bad habits. Really cheating for offense, taking the foot off the gas pedal in the defensive zone, and really doing too much in terms of relying on his own individual talent. He gets caught puck watching on defensive rushes a little bit too often, losing track of pinching defenders in the defensive zone, and it felt like Lafrenière at times was just a, I'm gonna do this player, because he can, and he can get away with it at the QMJHL level. So while he had the talent to get away with those more individualistic plays, I do wonder if there's going to be an adjustment period for Lafrenière once play gets ratcheted up into the NHL. I mean, for example, take a look at this play. I count 8 seconds elapsing from the puck entering the defensive zone to Lafrenière showing himself at all. That is essentially a penalty kill for his line mates. And when Lafrenière does make an appearance in the defensive zone, he's more strolling in and just waiting for the puck to come to him to generate an offensive breakout. And I couldn't help but feel that he was a player who was allowing his teammates to do the dirty work, and he was the one responsible for generating the scoring offensively. And here's another example in the defensive zone where Lafrenière is just nowhere to be found, and he's even largely absent as a breakout option high in the defensive zone. So this is a player with oodles and oodles of talent, and a bit far too much of a willingness to use it. And when he would rely on his flashier side a little bit too much, I came away thinking he was a bit lazy. And if I'm being totally honest, the highest ranked player in this year's draft is not going to get away with nearly as much if he's bobbling pucks and giving up on the play like he does here. And some people might see this as a positive, but I felt like another negative is where Lafrenière kind of pushes the envelope and ends up making just poor decisions on the ice that really ride the line between getting under the opponent's skin and just flagrantly being a penalty. And lastly, I don't care who you are or what happens to you on the ice or how wronged you feel by your opponent, you just can't be getting thrown out of games even at the junior level if you want to be a franchise cornerstone player, especially when the stakes can get very high in the NHL playoffs. So in the think category, I'm giving Lafrenière a 1D. It is undeniable that Lafrenière is a brilliant hockey player. He's exceptionally gifted on the offensive side of the game, able to chip in as a passer both in dangerous areas offensively and in transition, get into dangerous areas and shoot the puck to score on his own stick. He can chip in offensive transitions quite well. And away from the puck, I did find that more often than not, he was an intimidating pressure applicator who can cause turnovers from time to time. I just felt that there were some just bad habits that I saw in Lafrenière, but I'm gonna hope that those things really come down to just being in a league he doesn't belong in. I mean, his World Junior Championship performance this year was frankly spectacular, so when the time comes for him to rise to the occasion and really keep his head on straight, he seems to be able to do so. Next we go to the move category, and this is the area where people have highlighted as a negative for Alexis Lafrenière, but when he gets moving and gets to a top speed, he can really get moving, and he does so in a powerful and physical way that can intimidate opponents. And the thing that really impresses me is how adaptable under pressure he is in an aggressive way. He just knows how to weave through opponents, even if it's at not the fastest pace you've ever seen. He has strong strides through the neutral zone and generates exits and entries pretty efficiently, and when he needs to pull tricks out of his bag, he does so quickly and he can get through pretty much anyone. And the thing that I feel is really special here for him is he just feels like a player who's constantly in control and fully knowledgeable about what he is trying to pull off. And put simply, he can just make a dang fool out of you. A lot of the time. Being calm when you're on the ice and trusting your talent level and just doing what needs to be done to get the job done is a trait that I think is going to take Alexis Lafrenière a long way. You don't need to be playing at 100 miles an hour all the time to be a good hockey player. You just need to get your results and be good at the game, and I see Lafrenière as a perfect example of that. But as is the trend with Lafrenière, there were issues with Lafrenière seeming to not put in 100% from time to time. He didn't always take the time to settle play down when he would lose control of the puck and would just give up a little bit too often, and making better reads on when he can escape really heavy defensive pressure is going to be something that I think he might need to adjust to in the National Hockey League. NHL defensemen are very different from QMJHL defensemen, and I felt that Lafrenière was a player who tried to put a little bit too much on his own shoulders. And yes, it would be nice to see Lafrenière have that extra top gear speed that you see out of some other players in this year's draft, but this is again why I use the move category as not just looking at speed on its own. While he's not the most fluid or fast skater you can find in this year's draft, he's able to combine multiple parts of this area of the game to push play positively in a variety of ways. His hands, his feet, his brain, and his physical resiliency all come together to make a very interesting offensive winger. So in the move category, I'm giving Lafrenière a 1B. This might sound a little bit high considering that he doesn't have that super high top end gear, and yes, it would be nice to see him have that high-flying, high-gear game. He certainly is able to combine multiple areas of this part of the game together to create a very difficult player to stop in all areas of the ice. And to me, he's just the best problem solver that I've come across in this year's draft. Adapting to pressure and finding ways through opposing defenses is just something that he did all of the time. Next we go to the get category, and I have been criticizing Lafrenière's focus and awareness and overall play away from the puck a little bit in this video. But he does play well away from the puck when he's really dialed in and can intimidate opponents and cause a lot of turnovers. His defensive controlled zone transition percentage was pretty respectable, and he does forecheck hard and certainly has the strength to kind of throw his weight around a little bit. And again, he's a player who just does what is necessary to get a job done. He may not be extremely quick on his feet from a standing start especially, but he's powerful and efficient and gets to where he needs to be and applies pressure very effectively. And once the play turns around, he can simply take over a shift with the offensive tools that he has. He's able to use his stick effectively and stick check in the neutral zone and just wrap up opponents and clog up defensive transitions. But I found that there was just inconsistency in this area of the game. I found on defensive rushes he could take strange routes around the neutral zone and abandon his responsibilities positionally on those rushes, and he did show a little bit too much anticipation of turnovers in the defensive zone rather than supporting board battles. And I found that for an offensive skilled player that can humiliate an opponent, he fell victim to the same shenanigans when they were used against him in the defensive zone. And when things get greasy in front of the net, I found that he relied on his stick a little bit too much, especially for the player with the frame and raw mass that he seems to have on that frame. So in the get category for Lafrenière, I'm giving him a 1D. It's a bit of a mixed bag for me here, but he gets a 1 here because of what he's capable of in terms of applying pressure away from the puck and what he can do when he does cause a turnover. And the ceiling in this category that I saw was very high. It's just there was general inconsistency based on the shift or the game that I was tracking. He's powerful, intelligent, and can be very crafty and sneaky in defensive transitions, so I can only hope he captures that more as he gets older. So next we go to the pass category, and before you look at Alexis Lafreniere's raw pass completion percentage and panic a little bit, you should look at the percentage of the pass attempts that he makes that are dangerous into the slot. A 22% rate there is simply ridiculous. And when you look at the first 3 games I tracked relative to the final 4, the rate of dangerous passes per 60 minutes went from 9 to 21. There were times when he could be a bit careless with his passing decisions and just simply miss his target, but far more often than not, he was extremely crafty in a variety of scenarios in the offensive end, being deceptive with the puck on his own stick, using his skill to open up new passing lanes, and just being able to thread passes through multiple layers of defensemen. And similar to a player like Marco Rossi, he's able to fire passes into dangerous areas with a distinct purpose and a lot of weight behind them. This isn't a guy who's lobbing pucks to line mates in the offensive zone. He knows what he's trying to do when he's out there, and more often than not, he was getting the job done. At full pace, he shows a good ability to fake a shot and send passes through the slot from there, and when he uses his hands to open up passing lanes, there's just so much to like about his game in the offensive zone. So in the pass category, I'm giving Lafrenière a 1B. Yes, it would be ideal to see him up over 70% at least in terms of completing his passes, but his vision and creativity and skill in the offensive zone makes him one of the most lethal passers available in this year's draft. So again, going back to that focus, if he can gain more consistency and keep his head in the game every single time he steps on the ice, especially in transitions, and boost that completion percentage a little bit, he could be an absolutely lethal player in all areas of the ice. Finally, we look at the shoot category. And Lafrenière, when you look at high and medium danger attempts off his own stick, sits 19th in my tracking, which I think leaves a little bit to be desired and is a potential criticism of his game, but the quality of his shot is very notable. There's a quick release, he's able to put a ton of weight and power into his shot, he transmits a ton of force with his upper body over the puck, and he is able to put a puck anywhere on a goalie or on net very quickly. He also has a no-nonsense approach with the strength on his feet and the skill in his hands to get into those dangerous areas, as he could just take advantage when things would get really messy in front of the net and a little bit chaotic, and he would just use that trademark calm, intelligent approach to the game to create a scoring chance himself. But 50% of his shot attempts were low danger, and I think for a potential scoring winger, that's something that might need to improve, but this is a player with a great shot and tons of talent in this category. So in the shoot category, I'm giving Alexis Lafrenière a 1C. He is a dual threat offensive player, and with his shot, he can deceive defenders and goalies alike. He is able to juggle passing and shooting in conjunction to really keep defenders guessing as to what it is that he's trying to accomplish. He's crafty, he's sneaky, fundamentally his shooting talent is at a very high level, and if he can increase his pace of play a little bit and rely on his talent to push into more dangerous areas to shoot the puck himself a little bit more often, he could be an extremely dangerous offensive player, even more dangerous than he is now. So the way we wrap up these reports is we look at the best part of a player's game, the good part of a player's game, and the not so good part of a player's game. The best part of Lafreniere's game is his ability to use his skill intelligently to play at his own pace. I think that trait at his age is hard to find, but I think it's a big reason why he just plays a strong, fundamental game. He knows what needs to be done, and he just goes out and does it. He doesn't need to be the fastest guy on the ice because no one can really touch him when he really gets moving. He's sneaky and crafty and has multiple tools in his arsenal to just go around you and navigate his way up the ice one way or the other. The good part of his game is his dual threat offense. He has a tremendous amount of offensive vision with the puck on his own stick, able to make little plays out of nothing or use his skill to open up new passing lanes and identify targets. But on the shooting side, he is more than capable of driving offense with his shot. It's a very quick release that he's willing to use pretty much from anywhere, and while it would be nice to see him shooting from more dangerous areas more often, he does have the quality of shot that I think could allow him to score from pretty much anywhere. The not so good part is just the mental inconsistencies that I found really clouded my judgment of him. Don't get me wrong, I think Lafrenière is going to be a great player, but there were way more instances than I thought there would be where I just couldn't shake the feeling that I was looking for more out of Lafrenière, especially at 5-on-5. And I track at least 6 of the 7 games against very high level competition in the league in which the player plays. games. And in the 7 games that I tracked for Lafrenière, he was on the ice for just 2 5-on-5 goals for and 6 5-on-5 goals against. And both of those goals for came in the first game that I tracked way back in September. The first few games that I tracked of him, his team was just dominant on paper. But I did feel there was going to be regression based on the kind of bad habits that I was seeing out of Lafrenière. There was a lack of team player body language defensively, and the numbers did regress a little bit as the year went on. And for a player that's ranked first overall, the last 3 games that I tracked in the Quebec Major Junior League were sub 55% dangerous shot attempt percentages. Lafrenière might need to learn the instincts and 200-foot approach to the game that might make the difference between him being a franchise cornerstone top-line winger and just a good offensive winger who's a bit underwhelming at 5-on-5 while still producing good point production. So overall, I'm giving Lafrenière a 1B. I really don't have any doubts that he's going to be a very good National Hockey League player. It's just going to be a matter of how impactful he'll be. And it is inevitable that Alexis Lafrenière and Quinton Byfield will be inextricably linked from here until the day those two retire. So I want to compare my 7-game data set between the two players. And before we get into it, keep in mind that these players are both 10 months apart in age, and Alexis Lafrenière has had an extra season of development in the QMJHL. So in Lafreniere's favor, he drives dangerous shot attempt percentages 7% better than Quinton Byfield, so it's not a big difference in that area. In terms of generating offensive threat, he was 25% better with twice the individual dangerous shot attempts per 60 minutes, 4 times the high danger shot attempts per 60 minutes, but his dangerous passing rates were about comparable to Byfield. In my extremely rudimentary shot location based expected goals for percentage, Lafrenière bests Byfield by 15% in that category, and he suppressed shot attempts against from dangerous areas 20% better than Byfield. In Byfield's favor, he drives offensive transitions with control 12% better. In terms of offensive transitions per 60, he was involved in 28% more of them. And going across any blue line in any direction, Byfield was involved 13% more of the time, and I think that is kind of indicative of how Alexis Lafrenière tended to stay away from the flow of play a little bit. And Byfield managed to connect on 17% more passes than Lafrenière. So there are some areas where Byfield has an advantage over Lafrenière, and right now there are more categories where Lafrenière has more of an advantage on Byfield. But Byfield to me is driving the flow of play a little bit better than Lafrenière is, which might be because he's a center, and Lafrenière might be driving dangerous shot attempts more than Byfield because, well, he's a winger and he can pinch up in the offensive zone more. But to me, Lafrenière does bring more to the table now, but if I'm being honest, I think down the road that could change. And I do believe that if you're a Rangers fan, there is a discussion to be had about which player you'd rather have at number 1. If you want a player who probably will be a better NHL player right away, Lafrenière is your guy. But if you want to take a risk on someone who might drive play a little bit better, then I think Byfield might have a chance of going number 1. And before people bring up the difference between Lafreniere's World Junior this year and Quinton Byfield's World Junior this year, think back to last year where Lafrenière was in a similar boat to Quinton Byfield. He was even getting critiqued by his own coach during the tournament. So writing off Byfield as potentially the number 1 pick in this draft because of that tournament, I think leaves a lot to be desired in terms of analysis. And just looking at the most basic all situations results tracking that I do, Byfield and Lafrenière really were head-to-head in a number of different categories. So I just think that there's a really interesting discussion to be had, and it will be very interesting to see where these two players are in the next couple of seasons. I mean, it's hard to imagine a world where Lafrenière is not a premier offensive player in the NHL. He has dazzling skill under pressure, he's adaptable unlike anyone in this year's draft, and the only real scenario where I don't see Alexis Lafrenière having a premier NHL career is if he doesn't really find the ability to adjust to NHL pressure rather than QMJHL pressure, gets frustrated with that inability, and never really overcomes that hurdle that likely will be in his path for at least a little bit in the NHL. But this is a guy who just knows what needs to be done and executes better than anyone right now in the draft. And to me, he is at both the highest overall talent level when all things are considered in this year's draft, and also is the most projectable towards NHL success, so long as he keeps his head on straight moving forward. So that's all for this Scouching Report. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, you can click all the buttons you see below me so you never miss another one. If you really liked it, you could subscribe on Patreon or here on YouTube by clicking join below. You get access to a Discord server, early access to videos, credits at the end of every video, data sheets for hundreds of drafted and undrafted prospects, as well as plenty of other goodies. Or you could pick up some merchandise at the Scouchwear shop, where 50% of profits go to the Women's Sports Foundation. So that's all, and thanks for watching.